This is kind of sad. And I'm not just talking about my appearance right now because I'm not really dressed for this video, but I just heard about it and I had to talk about it. So, you probably heard by now that CD Projekt Red, or the co founder of CD Projekt Red, just released a video, um, basically a public apology for the state that Cyberpunk 2077 was released.
I and the entire leadership team are deeply sorry for this, and this video is me publicly owning up to that.
And there's a lot in this video to unpack and talk about, so we may not get to go through everything, but I did jot some notes down about the apology video and some of the stuff he said. So the first thing I'm going to say about this apology video is I can appreciate what he did. He told everyone in the video that this is him owning up to the mistakes of the company and the release of the game. So I can appreciate that, someone who's part of the industry, who is actually trying to apologize to us to try to regain our trust. Okay, I can respect that. So with going through the list of everything that they talked about, or some of the things they talked about, it seems a little weird that this is some of the stuff that happened. Let me try to explain. So he starts off at some point in the video saying that him and the board are the ones who are responsible for the game releasing when it did. He says not to blame anyone who worked on the game. It comes down ultimately to him and the board to have the final decision of the game to release.
Please don't fault any of our teams for what happened. They all are incredibly talented and hardworking. Myself and the board are the final decision makers, and it was our call to release the game.
My problem with that statement, first off, is that if you and a number of others have the final say for when the game can be released, did nothing in any demos that was available or any type of work that you've seen, any progress, did nothing come up as a red flag saying, hey, we should push this back a bit more, that these are some issues that are going to come up, we shouldn't release it right now? Did nothing like that happen? Did no one who worked on the game know about these issues that they couldn't get through, these challenges they couldn't get past, and would maybe speak up and say, hey, you have this release date coming up, but I don't think it's ready because of the X, Y, and Z. We can't get this to work right now. So I don't know how that works exactly, but if you are responsible for the release or the decision to release a game, how did you not know about these issues that were in the game that it clearly wasn't ready for release? So moving on, he talked about how he never intended for this stuff to happen, or they never intended for this to happen. Again, back to my statement, I can understand you didn't think it was going to happen, maybe, or you didn't want this type of situation to happen, but it did because you didn't really, I guess, didn't really take a good look at everything that needed to be looked at. One of the things that he brought up in the video was that the game is massive and it has multiple custom objects, a lot of interacting systems and mechanics, and that led for a big challenge for them.
Cyberpunk 2077 is huge in scope. And I'm not only talking about quests or things you see at first glance. I'm talking about a multitude of custom objects, interacting systems, and mechanics.
My problem is that you say that there's all these things in the game, but are they really in the game? There's so many stuff that was taken out of the game already. The ability to bribe the police officers or to interact with the cops, the ability to use your arm blades to climb walls. There was supposed to be third-person cutscenes, I was told, which is why you should care about your character's customization, because there were going to be third-person cutscenes. So you took certain things out, which I can understand, certain things that you need to take out, maybe it's not necessary. But to say that the challenge also came from all these mechanics that's in the game, when there really isn't that many mechanics that I can see that would matter in terms of this situation, I'll agree that the game does have a lot of variety within the weapons. Each gun looks, shoots, and reloads differently from other ones. And a lot of the cars have different interiors, which a lot of games out there don't really do that. You mostly find that in racing games like Forza. So they actually took some time to give different interiors for the cars. That can add to that whole massive scale thing. But you also have to consider that you're claiming that there's so much more mechanics in the game that aren't really there. So that shouldn't really be an excuse for what happened with that particular topic that you brought up. So moving on, this one kind of upset me because it doesn't really make too much sense to me. He said that they wanted, basically what he said was they wanted to focus primarily on the PC version and then work on bringing the console version to to where they wanted it to be.
On its own, this is a challenge, but we made it even more difficult for ourselves by wanting to make the game look epic on PCs and then adjusting it to consoles, especially old gens.
What that tells me is their primary thought was the PC version, and their secondary thought was consoles. Last gen, maybe next gen, current gen, whatever you want to call it. And my problem with that is, why are you trying to focus primarily on one console, so to speak, the PC, and then focus secondary on the other ones when this game has been in development since like 2012 or something like that. So you had all this time to work with the limitations of the PlayStation and the Xbox, and they were saying in the video, or he was saying in the video, how the PC port is not perfect, but it's pretty amazing, and it's much better than the console experience. I have not found that to be true when I look on videos on YouTube. I see worse experiences on PC than I see on console. I see more crazy bugs and glitches on PC than I see on console. The only difference is that on base model consoles, the game just doesn't work. It doesn't run. But when you look at the PC version to the Xbox One X and the PlayStation 4 Pro, there is more bugs and glitches that I'm seeing on the PC version than on the consoles of those Pro versions. Now, it could be that majority of these players are PC players and not many console players are posting videos. That could be it. But I play on a PS4 Pro. You can see it right behind me. It plays not perfect, but it runs at about an 85%. I have some frame rate issues here and there, some glitches here and there, but nothing game breaking. I had like 2 crashes so far, maybe like 2 crashes. I've seen people with multiple crashes. So how can you say the PC port is amazing and really good and not where you want it to be, but still really good, when it's really not? The game just really isn't running good on most consoles. Apparently, it's running great on Stadia. I heard, Stadia's performance for that is running pretty good. So, if anything, your most successful version of the game is on Stadia. And there's no mention of it at all, because nobody plays Stadia. No offense to those who do. But you can't sit here and say your PC version is amazing when it really isn't, okay? Moving on, they said that the old consoles kind of lack the tech they need to run the game, and they wanted to focus on next gen.
To give a concrete example, and the main culprit, we had to constantly improve our in-game streaming system for all gen consoles. Streaming is responsible for feeding the engine with what you see on screen, as well as the game mechanics. And since the city is so packed and the disk bandwidth of all gens is what it is, it constantly challenged us.
Again, my problem with that is this game has been in development during the previous gen. The PS5 wasn't even a mention when this game was in development. So how are you saying that you didn't have, you couldn't get this game to work on that current gen at the time because it lacked the tech to run the game? My understanding from what I'm told is when you're developing a game for that current generation, you are given the tools to work within that console's technical limitations. So clearly, what you were trying to do is get something that was more advanced than what the current gen can handle, and whatever PC can handle with those new, whatever you need, a new graphics card or whatever. And so it makes me wonder, how are you knowledgeable to get this game to run on next gen when even those consoles weren't even really like being created at the time? The specs probably weren't even out there yet. They're probably still working on the ideas of those consoles. So I don't really understand that whole thing. It just doesn't make too much sense to me. You can't really say that it's the fault of the console not being strong enough to run. You should have just worked within your limitations of what the current consoles can do. Or you can also say, hey, we wanted it to be for next gen because of all the pushbacks and all the delays. You should have just released it on next gen. If you have a current gen, then unfortunately you can't get the game yet. Some people might have been fine with that. They say, hey, I'm going to get a next gen anyway. I can wait a little longer to try to get it on the next gen. Or you could have just kept it in the limitations and used it for current gen and then have the update for next gen. As for the update of next gen, I will get into that in a few, but there is some news about that. They said that they had to work hard for the last gen. Again, it you really just try to focus on PC and current gen. You basically just said it out loud, straight up. So what they said is that one of the biggest challenges was the pandemic, and I understand that you had to have employees work from home.
This all happened while working from home with all the challenges resulting from the COVID-related restrictions. A lot of the dynamics we normally take for granted got lost over video calls or email, and we took that hit too.
And that's a legit excuse for certain issues that can happen from employees working from home who won't really have the resources available to them that they would on site. But my problem with your statement on this part was that he was saying that a lot of things get lost within communication through email and calls. That's not really a fault to any situation of working remotely. That's the fault of the individuals who are not properly communicating what needs to be communicated. If someone needs to say, "Hey, these cutscenes are not working," or "this certain mission is messed up with all these glitches," because I have seen a certain mission that has quite a few glitches, and there was a major glitch with one of the characters in the game. So it comes down to the person who works on that particular part who says, "Hey, look, this is something that needs to be worked on a bit more. We need to find out a way to work on it." And it was being developed at the time, with the technology of, calls and emails and video chats and all this way to communicate and to work with one another and to share your different tools with one another, screen sharing, email attachments, whatever the case may be. It's a legit excuse for the pandemic to say that it was challenging to get the game to be, properly worked on and developed. But you've been working on this game for like 8 years. This is only like a 1 year of working remotely, and again, there's all that communication that needed to be done by the user and the employee and the higher up who gets the decisions. So that's what I'm gonna fault on them on that for. I understand working from home is hard with the pandemic, but you have to communicate to get this thing working. You can't just you know blindly do something and not own up to the mistakes. So essentially, I am kind of blaming the employees as well. They do have a part in it. It's not just the higher ups who are responsible for the game. They're not physically making the game or they're not digitally making the game. They just have the decision making. It's the individual developers who are making the game. They also have to take responsibility for their actions. Now they did talk about the free DLC and the other updates that they have. So the first update is coming out within 10 days. So I believe that'll be the 23rd. The 23rd or so, the update should be out. And then the second one should be out in February. But it's still not going to be enough to get the game on the previous gen consoles to work the way it needs to.
As for the free DLCs, our initial plan was to deliver them just after the release, much like we did with The Witcher 3. We decided to focus on the most important fixes and updates first, and we'll be releasing the DLCs afterwards. Expect more information in the upcoming months.
Not only that, but you're also not going to see any improvements on the next gen consoles until the second half of this year. They are primarily focusing on the previous gen consoles, which is the PS4 and the Xbox One, which means that there are also, those do incorporate with the Xbox One X and the PlayStation 4 Pro. So realistically, you may not get this game the way the way it's meant to be played until 2022. So why even release it when you did? He did briefly talk about when they had the reviewers play the game. I don't really know what much detail he put into it that hasn't been said yet. If you don't know, those who were reviewing the game who had the PC port, they weren't allowed to use any of their recorded gameplay. They were forced to use pre-approved gameplay from CD Projekt Red, which was another red flag for a lot of people. We all saw that and thought, okay, something's wrong with the game. It has to be an issue, because no other company would do that if the game was fine. So ultimately, what's going on here is there's a lot that he talked about. I can respect him trying to own up to the mistakes, but there are others who are responsible who are not being, who are not stepping up to take the blame. So I think ultimately what happened is they wanted to forget about last gen, I still call it current gen. Last gen, current gen. They wanted to forget about it. They wanted to focus on PC. And they can't even say PC and next gen because, like I said, next gen wasn't even really thought up at the time. They just wanted to focus on PC, and even then, they still fucked it up. So I can't really say that I believe everything in this apology. I can see that he's trying to be sincere and he's trying to educate us on what's going on and what it looks like from the inside. But they also have to see how it looks from the outside, okay? I do believe that those who were developing the game needed to speak up. If they knew the game was going to release on a certain date and they knew that these board of directors and the co-founders were trying to, release it on a certain day, they should have spoke up and said, we need more time because this is what's going on. And this is a company who wants to make their customers happy. They're not EA. They're not going to release a game just to beat a deadline. If the workers would have said, hey, we need more time, I'm pretty sure, based on their track record and what they say they want to do, they would have given them more time to work on the game. It would have upset the gamers, but it would have been a much better experience, hopefully a much better experience, if they had taken their time a bit more and addressed these issues before release. So like I said, it's a pretty long video. There's a lot more to discuss in with this situation. You can watch the video of the apology video on their Twitter. It's there. It's like 5 minutes long. But like I said, we've been tucked. They must have known it wasn't gonna be working fine. We've been tucked. They did what they did, and that's it for now. Like I said, you won't have the game perfect until 2021, possibly. At least for that's for next gen. For current gen, PS4 and all that, it should be better by the middle of this year, but still not perfect. I'm at Dylan Tech. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.